Hi there, Perennial Pride listeners. Thanks for joining me on this podcast today. Really excited to chat with you about retirement. That idea that everyone's shooting for. There's what we all strive to gain as it relates to our lives. That's what we're taught. I'm going to share some of my thoughts around that. That maybe that's not the healthiest sort of target to go after in terms of your financial life, but it is something that we can strive for. I kind of term it more transition. I hope to be on this earth for a while. So retirement and the definition of it is to put out a service. And I don't really like that idea. I think we're here to serve in some way for our families, for our communities, and to share our gifts to those around us and hopefully make this world a better place. And so I hope to really never officially retire. But I was watching this PBS special, which I find those great. I don't know. I think they are so well done, these documentaries were on the banking crisis and such. But there's one on the retirement crisis. And, it was a little older one done maybe 2000, maybe 10 years ago or less, a little less than that. But it's still relevant, certainly today. It hasn't lost it because there's a lot of the things that they were pointing to really are still alive and kicking today, and maybe even worse off today, given what's happened in our friends at the Fed that have really, financialized our lives here with the markets, with what they're doing. And so a really fascinating documentary. I highly recommend you watch it. But really watching, the real lives of people as they're stressing over retirement and thinking they'll never, ever get a chance to live the American dream and retire in the sunset on a beach somewhere, and just the deflation in their faces and their emotions. And to me, finances are great to have, but it's really about how you get to live your life and get to do the things you want to do and impact the things you want to impact and do things on your terms. That's really what, having a little bit more control and freedom with our wealth helps us do. And looking at and hearing about the stories of these people, it was just upsetting to think that they aren't living their lives because of the stress that comes with trying to build their wealth and live up to the standards that our society says are our symbol of success. And retirement is one. And so I think we really have to maybe step back from a little bit because, I'm talking to my expert guy on retirement, Brian McCloskey from Revisionist Wealth. And he's talking to a lot of folks in their 60s and even ones that have done really successfully. They still haven't really thought about a lot of the risks as they enter into retirement and how to manage them. And some of them take some time to build up. And so that they can, have the retirement lifestyle that they truly want with the less stress and hopefully enjoyment they get, and increased enjoyment of what they get to enjoy with their wealth. And so today I just want to cover some basic things around some of the risks that maybe as we're building our wealth are not top of mind for us as we think about retirement, but something we should be thinking about, because some of these things take some time to maybe reposition assets and think about what the end looks like as we get closer to that, maybe transitional stage in our lives. What can we do to, take the reins and responsibility to sort of investigate how do we do this better? How do we prepare? Because a lot of folks who, like I said, are entering in retirement think they've amassed everything and done everything right, come to realize that there's gaps in their thinking and based on what the typical financial advice tells us to do, it's actually putting people in a lot of difficult positions and putting a lot of stress on as they transition. So for the key sort of risks that we often think about more in retirement, not as much while we're living, but there is certainly overlap, right? It's not like the light switch flips on and you go from building wealth to just retirement. There is a transition, and like I said, for a lot of people, you see some of the people like Warren Buffett. He's still working into his later stages of life because he's found purpose, right? He found something that he enjoys, and he continues to build wealth, even if he has so much money that he can never spend. So it's really important. So that's one of the risks that people face as they move in retirement is longevity. And because we don't know when we're going to leave this earth, we are mortal, so that's going to happen, but we don't know. So if I knew when we were going to die, it's easy to plan. Financial planning becomes very, very simple, right? Just see how many years you have and how much you have to spend, and do the math, right? So for the most part, it becomes very easy. But because we don't know this, it becomes more of a challenge. And so how does this relate to, kind of our current day? It's building wealth. Say you're earlier in your years, 30s or 40s, you're building it, is really, recognizing we're on this for, even though it seems maybe a short time, it is a pretty long window if you're maintain your health and sort of state of being emotionally and spiritually, you can live a really long life. And so we have to focus on taking care of ourselves, our health, getting days off, right? Regenerating our minds so we can sort of plan for the long term, right? Treat ourselves. We're our number one assets. We say this all the time. And how do we treat ourselves? Sometimes we work so crazy amounts that, we don't even treat ourselves to a health day or give ourselves some time to ourselves. And so it's important to really build that into your just daily lifestyle and make sure that you're taking care of your number one asset, because the better you give yourself that sort of relief and rest, and you'll be able to tackle those hard challenges as they come, because we're all going to face them. And so the stronger we can get with that, the longer we can withstand, as we're building wealth and certainly in retirement. And really, for a lot of folks that maybe are in situations, and I was in that too, where you're in jobs or careers that maybe were just not fulfilling or connected anymore. And you may have had it originally, but now maybe it's just you've lost its luster. This is the time to really start exploring, like, what if I had a choice to do anything from a career or work or lifestyle, what would that look like? How do I build my life and then fit in my career or job to sort of support it? And we don't often think that way. I certainly didn't. I was just trying to get a job to make money, and that was part of what the American dream was, and what we've been taught, and go after that, even if the job is something you don't like, right? Or a field you don't like. It's because the money is such important. So this is a great time as you're building to think about, are there other areas you want to get into that you find fulfillment or interest or passion towards, so that you can keep that going long term, right? And that may change too, right? And this is the beauty of it. You have that ability and freedom to choose that. And that's really, I think, what ultimately people want, like to be able to spend their days with the people who they want to spend it with, doing the things they enjoy. And it seems maybe a pie in the sky, but it's achievable and people are doing it. It just takes some energy and focus to explore it and then go after it and potentially make transitions. And, even for my story, it took a while, right? And because you experiment and see what fits. And that's what I would certainly encourage everyone to explore as you're thinking about it. What, in the careers and jobs they're doing now, is this something they want to sustain? Or is there other areas they want to get into and start dipping your toes in, learning about them, meeting with others? And you'll be pleasantly surprised of what you may find, and you may just find it just by the sheer nature of trying many avenues, right? We sometimes need to explore them enough. And I look at that certainly with my kids as they're sort of trying to evaluate their life direction. It sometimes you need to see all the things you don't want to do to realize what you want to do. So that's number one, longevity. Keep yourself healthy, find stuff that really brings you passion and joy and sort of keeps you motivated and energized. I think it will certainly help you as you transition to retirement. And hopefully, while you're living in your or you're in your main career, like getting fulfillment out of it each and every day. Another part of that too is tied to income streams. And, as we think about longevity and sometimes we need to have a variety of income streams to support us, because things may go off kilter sometimes in terms of our investments or our assets. So one of the keys too is to also start diversifying income streams and getting as many as you can that are related to areas and investments that you feel great with, whether it's a business or real estate, and those are things you need to explore, something that certainly can help you with. So number two big risk in this happens now as you're building wealth, but certainly in retirement, taxes. Taxes are consumed so much of our expenses that it does in a lot of ways. It's providing obviously services, through the government and protection for this great nation, but it does remove our wealth and restricts our freedom. That's just the reality of it. More money goes away from us, less that we can do to support our families, to invest. And so this is an area that is important to really look at and provide and take some time to plan for. Talk to tax experts and explore. There's a lot of ways that we can invest in things that actually the government partners with us. And Tom Wheelwright has a great book, Tax Free Wealth. And so there's a lot of ways to explore this, but reality is that we have been taught to just defer taxes as long as possible, right? We get a tax break today, and then down the road, we're building up this pile of money that, maybe in a qualified account that's going to be taxed at a time when we have fewer deductions in life, whether it be homes or children or education. Like, we don't have a lot of deductions. So then we have a big account potentially that is in the crosshairs of our taxing authorities, the IRS. So that's what a lot of people are starting to face, because even the ones who've done it successfully, right? They're in the midst of trying to figure out, how do I use this money? I didn't want to pay taxes at the beginning. Now I got to pay them. And they can be more expensive. And if you look at broadly around what's happening in this economy, our government, the debt, the pressures on our social programs, like they're way underfunded. And so there's certainly evidence and certainly experts saying that tax rates are likely to go up. Can't control that. So this is where you kind of say, okay, what can I control? Well, obviously planning for and putting investments that maybe are more tax advantaged, but also making sure you're tax diversified. And what do I mean by that? Well, obviously the typical approach is defer, put them in tax deferred accounts, and then down the road later you'll use those dollars, but they'll be taxed at that your presumably lower rate. That might happen, but what if it doesn't? And so having assets that are also tax free, whether it be Roth or Roth IRAs or whole life insurance, other things that maybe are tax advantaged or tax free, would be really important to do. And then even having some money that are in taxable accounts, like bank accounts and brokerage accounts, where you pay tax on the capital gains when you need to use them. So there's certainly a mix of that could be very beneficial to plan for. And so when tax environments change or rules change, you have some flexibility to maximize the use of your dollars. And so it may not just be one approach, like put everything into tax free, because we want to take advantage of some of the deductions and things that the IRS allows us. So it takes some careful planning to think through that. And there's a powerful a book called The Power of Zero by David McKnight, something I would highly encourage you to read. There are talks about how you can actually get to a zero tax bracket in retirement. And that's not going to be for everyone, but it's something that at least gives you some food for thought on how to start repositioning and making sure you can use more of your assets at a time you want to, have a little bit more freedom and sort of maybe less work in your life. The third major risk a lot of people are facing, and certainly at the time of this recording, there's a lot of it, market volatility, as most people are invested in the stock market. And now, given how much the Fed has infused themselves, we can't wait to hear what they're going to say, because that's going to drive everything into the market, and everything's relying on them, whether they're tightening or loosening their policies, and what that might mean for the stock market. It's just you're waiting on bated breath for whatever they're going to say. Any little piece of information, it drives and pushes the market. So it is an unfortunate thing that we're facing with today. And so it is a reality. So we're dealing with a lot more volatility. The boom has gone on for quite some time, and the expectation is the bust will be even bigger. And this will continue to move on as and our governments play a larger role in our financial lives. So it is something, unfortunately, that I think we've gotten used to. And we got to factor that in. When you're building assets and growing it, it may not feel that bad, because you're going to go up and down. And for the long run, yes, it's proven to provide some decent returns. But you got to, kind of go through that wave. And then when you're, positioned to use your dollars in retirement, well, the volatility can be dangerous, right? Because you take some massive losses early in retirement, then your assets don't have time to regrow. And so that's really something to consider. And one of the best tools, and and I've heard this before, how to deal with volatility. And there's a concept called a volatility buffer, right? They tell us we can only take X percent, whether it's 3 or 4% from our equity accounts or bond accounts, to safely ensure it lasts. Well, what if you could take more and provide a volatility buffer in down markets? So take, for instance, a down market. Is that a good time for you to start withdrawing money from that account? Well, most people say no, because you take a loss and you basically compound it by taking money out and using it. Well, what if you had another uncorrelated asset, whether it be bank accounts sitting in, or treasuries or something, or cash value life insurance, that can actually supply you income that's uncorrelated to markets, and then let your market accounts regrow? And so, going through the mechanics of it, you can see that you can have your accounts, your equity accounts, last a lot longer and take more out of them if you are planning to have this volatility buffer in place somewhere, and a certain amount, right? A number of years available for you can use, so that when those times hit, you pull your dollars from another source and let your other assets that have gone down hopefully regroup at some point in the near future, and so you can maximize the use of both accounts. And so it's just something to think about and plan for. And some of them need some planning up front, especially if you want assets that are going to be productive while you're building wealth, not just sitting in the bank earning, say, nothing. So the last risk I want to just cover here in this short little podcast is centered around cognitive decline. And obviously we started this talking about longevity. Hopefully we'll be on this earth long, productive, enjoying life as much as we can. But the reality is that we do see, and we see it across people, cognitive decline. You don't have to go that far, and you just look at the president of our country, right? You can see the decline even physically and some mentally. And so this is an unfortunate reality we got to face. And so some of the decisions and the way we're approaching our finances while we're building wealth, while we're really actively engaged, it is something that we have to consider down the road. And it also balances with the stress. Sometimes we want to get into a slower mode, and I want less to manage. Some people love it. And if that's you, then great. Then, you can still actively manage it and maybe explore new investments and such. But some people want to have something simpler, and that's where Social Security comes into play. And you used to have pensions, but a lot of people don't have them anymore. And so getting things like annuities that can mimic paychecks can really reduce a lot of the stress. You guaranteed income coming in, and you don't have to worry about it, right? That could be one piece of your plan in terms of moving into retirement. And some of these things could be planned ahead of time, 5, 10 plus years ahead of time leading up to it, right? So that money's there for you to create income in a steady way that you can't outlive, and you don't have to worry about them, right? It's coming in. The other thing too is to think about, which we also talked in the longevity side of things, is other streams of income, right? To ensure that if one gets hit, whether it's market volatility, like you have other sources and that are income that's automatically coming in, or like we talked about the volatility buffer, something that could relieve the stress, and you have another drawer to pull from when times get rough, and you have that available and planned out, and you're ready to go, and hopefully reduces stress. And so, but in reality is having these pieces in play, take some planning and thought, and sometimes building up these assets and exploring them for yourselves, because a lot of the strategies that we talk about are not what is typically shared across. It isn't just equity based or bond based or whatever. It's a very holistic view of both investments and insurances and coordination across them, and just opening up people's minds to seeing what they are, as opposed to what they may hear on a 10-second clip somewhere, right? There's so many truths that we just want to assume they're right, but to investigate them is really key for you individually. That's why personal finance is so personal. There's more personal in it than finance in a lot of ways. And so you got to find those things that are personally right for you and your situation, and what you want your life to be. Because again, this is how, when we first started this episode, is how do we have our finances drive what we want in our lives, right? So we can support the things we want to do and live the life we truly choose to live, as opposed to it basically choosing us, and we kind of are coming for the ride. that certainly is not what I think most people want. So hopefully this was helpful, gives you some a variety of things to consider and talk through and think about as you're building wealth. And if you're closer to retirement, certainly things that you need to start maybe considering getting in place. And these are just some, it's not exhaustive for sure, but hopefully it gives you a sense that how the planning aspect of it is very important, but it's also understanding what it is you want to have happen is the key. And then you kind of explore avenues and strategies to get there. So certainly if you ever want to get help, certainly resources, plenty to read about, and you can certainly book a time with me to talk through them and certainly love to help. Take care, and we'll see you on the next episode of the Perennial Pride Podcast. Thanks for joining me on this episode today. I really am grateful for you as listeners to the Perennial Pride Podcast. I hope you're getting some tremendous value out of it and hopefully pushing you along your journey to financial freedom. I put this podcast together really to help you get more educated around your finances so that you feel empowered to live the life that you really want. And if you like the content that you heard today or watched, then I would encourage you to go to my website, perennialpride.com. There's tons of other content there. And you can access my book, Wealth Beyond the Numbers. You can buy it there on my website. It's a aggregation of a lot of great tips and tools I've learned to not only build my wealth in my accounts, but build wealth in my life and abundance and joy, and something that has a lot of my experiences in the journey that I've been on personally. Hopefully that can be also of value to you as you sort of move forward. So thanks again for being a Perennial Pride listener, and we'll see you on the next episode.